Hello, everyone, and welcome to Staying Ahead of the Curve. I'm Jeff Snyder, Vice President, Senior Consultant with CAMAC Retirement Group, and we're coming to you almost live from the Spark Conference here in the District of Columbia. Actually, we're outside in Maryland. And so Spark, if you're not aware, is an industry association of record keepers and asset managers. And I'm very pleased to have back on the show Mr. Bob Schultze, who's the President and CEO of ICMA RC. Bob, thanks for joining us on the show.
Thank you, Jeff. It's great to be invited to this program.
Now, before we get into retirement, I think you at ICMA RC are celebrating a very important milestone. It's your 45th.
Yeah.
I was going to say wedding
Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah.
But it's an anniversary, and you celebrated it here in May. Talk a little bit about ICMA and RC and what you've accomplished as an association.
Well, ICMA Retirement Corporation was created back in 1972 as a spin-off of the International City County Managers Association, which is a professional association of thousands of city managers and county administrators. And it was created originally back then to provide portable retirement benefits for city managers. So it's an independent company, and it's been around for now 45 years, and we've grown quite a bit. We started with one client in the city of Charlottesville, Virginia.
Yep, wow.
And now 45 years later, we've got, I think, 1.3 million accounts and about $52 billion in assets under administration.
Well, congratulations. Congratulations.
Thanks.
And to someone who's been on site, it's pretty impressive to kind of come on site and see meet your team and work with your team out in the field. Yeah. So we're here at the Spark Conference. We're having you back on the show. Let's talk about what the latest trends in the public defined contribution industry or part segment of the business is.
You know, it's a constantly moving industry, and one of the trends that we've noticed and we think is a need to be filled is what I call investment advisory services. Up until now, we and most of our peers in this industry provide what we call investment education, which means we're describing what's basically the investment funds that are in a plan lineup, but not necessarily telling or advising them, a participant, exactly where to place their money and how to construct their portfolio. And sure, we've had target date funds. Target date funds are a nice default, but I think they work best for younger people who don't have large balances yet, still a long way from retirement. Advisory services, on the other hand, we think are really the next step in the evolution. And we now are about to roll out an expansion of what we call our Guided Pathways program with a large group of trained advisors that are almost ready to roll. They'll be ready to roll in July. And the difference between what we plan to do versus what we've been doing is so of passively offering the program and letting people find it, we're reaching out to people who we think that might best benefit from the advisory service.
And so all this was created in the context that we have these new fiduciary rules that it looks like they're going to finally become effective. Fingers crossed. But I mean, I
don't know. I don't think they're going to be effective.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it looks like. I mean, right now, I guess we haven't gotten the latest tweet, but right now it looks like it's going to become effective. But you had to create this product or service in the context of these new rules.
Yeah, and I think we're in a position to provide advice that's in the best interest of the participant, because we'll have highly credentialed people. They'll have their Series 65 advisory licenses, and they'll be well trained with good products backing them up.
So we know that people need investment advice. What are some of the biggest challenges that you all are seeing out in the field? I mean, you've got countless people talking to plan sponsors, talking to participants. What are some of the biggest challenges that exist today for many of these government sponsors?
I think the biggest challenges they face are participation rates. These are voluntary programs. Most state and local employees have as their primary retirement plan a defined benefit plan. And that's great, and I hope that continues indefinitely going forward. And these defined contribution plans, like the 457s and the 401s, generally have been seen as supplemental. Increasingly, however, I think plan sponsors are realizing that as defined benefit plans have been curtailed, some have been closed, but most have just had their benefits reduced. They're not as generous as they used to be, and somehow these participants have to figure out how to make up that income gap that may be facing 20, 30 years out. Participants are waking up, or plan sponsors are waking up to that fact, and they're trying to figure out if they can't use automatic enrollment, which in many cases run counter to anti-garnishment rules that might exist in a particular state. If they can't use that, how are they going to get more people into their program? and get them invested and take advantage of the compounding that the time would allow for these folks. And then for those people who are in the program, how can they get them to save more? And so we're working with our plan sponsors on ways to really attract more attention and get people more engaged in these retirement plans.
And so, there is a movement afoot in our industry to high technology. I know you're one of the firms that are really revamping websites, coming out with mobile apps. You had
Putting a lot of money into
you had the food truck, which is really the virtual reality. So you're coming with new innovative ways of engaging. But how important is to your clients, the field staff, the people in the trenches, and I'm not demeaning them, but people that are out there working with participants? How is that high touch model, as I call it, still valued by these participants, by these plan sponsors?
I think it is, and we think that's one of the niches that we have in the industry, is we're more of a high touch provider. I think you have to provide the entire continuum of services from high tech to high touch, because quite often those who may begin to engage in their plan in a high tech way, they're using online tools. They may find that while they're using those tools and that may be helpful, at some point in time they want to talk to an expert. They want validation. They want verification of what they may be looking at on their computer or on their smartphone. And I think that high touch is invaluable.
Well, and I think I liked earlier when you were talking about young and you pointed to me, so thank you for doing that. And I consider myself a very young 45.
Yeah, but I was meeting young people with hair, though.
Well, thank you. Well, there we go. So yeah, I think we agree, and that's something that when we're doing RFPs as a firm, and I'm sure you're seeing those RFPs as they come in, that's something that's really valued. And I think when we look at these retirement plans, each plan is its own ecosystem, and therefore they may have different needs in terms of technology, in terms of outreach, and so you've got to develop a customized communication platform. We're going to talk to Alex Hanna a little bit later on about that, because that's Mr. Hallmark and he's the originator of the virtual reality truck. But really, it's about adaptive tactics to a particular ecosystem.
Yeah, when I travel around the country visiting clients, and we have clients in 49 of the 50 states, so I spend a lot of time on the road, and when I ask a plan sponsor, what do you like best about the services we provide, the first thing that comes to their mind is, we like the local representative that works on our plan. That's high touch.
Absolutely, and we know, I've done searches for the last decade, it's value. It doesn't have to be the cheapest. And I'm not saying that it's expensive or not expensive, but it's about selecting what is valuable to the constituency, what is going to bring the best outcomes for participants. And I think that's kind of the lens that many plan sponsors are looking at. Mm-hmm. Let's shift gears. You talked about the investment advisory services that you're working on, the guided pathways, if you will. Let's talk investment solutions. I've reviewed and evaluated many investment products. One of the products that you are well known for as an organization is Advantage Trust Plus Fund. It's a stable value, commingled stable value product. But I want to hear from you your perspective of what appeals to plans and participants in terms of investment solutions.
Well, public employees tend to be conservative investors, okay, much more so than I think their private sector counterparts are. And so we are so proud of the fact that our stable value product, which is probably the most conservative investment product that we offer in our lineup, we've been asked by even private sector companies, 401k companies, can we put this on our platform? And up until recently, we said, no, we can't do that. But now we're going to begin offering that separate from our plan administration services to both public and private
and you would need to create
sponsors.
And just, I think the rationale is that you need to have a charter or make
charter
some decision changes there.
Yeah.
And you have to create a separate pool, because these are pooled insurance type products.
That's
and
correct.
so you have to
That's
have
correct.
Similar employer types. And just for people in the audience who may not understand that level of complexity.
The other thing that we give a lot of thought to is how to define benefit plans. How do those investment programs compare performance-wise to defined contribution plans? And there's no question that DB plans outperform DC plans for the most part. And one of the reasons is they have a lot of built-in advantages as investors. The biggest one being that defined benefit plans can be patient investors. And they don't have to worry about posting an NAV every night. They don't have to worry about liquidity, where hot money is moving around very quickly from one fund to the next, potentially every day. And so one of the challenges that we're looking at right now is how do we take advantage of the illiquidity premium that can be offered by certain alternative investments, particularly private equity. Private equity has been pulling along defined benefit plan portfolios for many, many years, both in good times and bad. And we'd like to be able to offer that as at least a sleeve, perhaps in our target date funds, to our defined contribution plan investors, and still provide them with the daily liquidity at the same time.
And I'm just going to, I'm here at the Spark Conference. I'm actually participating in a panel tomorrow on this very topic.
Really? Okay.
We actually have a client that we're working with today that is really interested in adding an illiquid investment. And I'm part of an industry group called the DCREC, where we're actually trying to add direct real estate, potentially add direct real estate to these asset allocations, because they, to your point, exist in a defined benefit plan.
Yeah.
And it's how do you take those illiquid...
But you have to have patient capital
You
to
have to
take
have patient
advantage
capital,
of it.
but you also have to have infrastructure at the record keeper to make sure that you can handle the liquidity and also the strike price on the daily NAV, et cetera. And then there are different flavors of adding in a liquid investment. So one client with whom we're working today as a firm is looking to actually change the valuation to a quarterly valuation for the target date fund. And that necessitates some record keeping infrastructure. So I think there's more to come on that, but I think what you're thinking about is if you're doing it in a defined benefit plan where you're a patient investor and it makes sense to do it there, maybe you can bring that in to the DC plan. And so that's very innovative.
Yeah, thank you. And that's what we're working on this year, and we hope by the end of the year we'll have a solution available.
So let's, you mentioned patient capital. Let's talk about ICMA, RC capital, and where you're, you like the way I just, I'm getting,
Nice segue.
I'm getting pretty good at these segue things. But in terms of the future and where you're allocating your resources, I would imagine, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, I'm going to let you talk in a second, maybe. But let's talk about the people. People are very important in our industry because this is a high-touch type of industry where it's all built through relationships. Technology, you got to keep investing in technology, compliance. But let's hear from the horse's mouth, no pun intended. Give us your perspective where you're allocating your resources.
Well, people is one thing, particularly with respect to the investment advisory service. We now have a group of about 35 advisors that have been recently trained, that they obtained their proper licenses. We're starting out in July with them as sort of the core group of investment advisors. That's going to be expanded to probably over 100, probably by 2018. Okay, so that's one type of investment. Another is in technology, particularly using fintech tools. Another trend that I probably should have mentioned earlier on in the program is account aggregation tools, debt management tools, various kinds of tools that our participants can need to improve their financial acumen. I think is one of the big trends that everyone in our space has to be able to provide. So we're investing in that. We're also investing in services, a technology that will help reduce the burden that plan sponsors have incurred over the years. Since the Great Recession, state and local employment has been curtailed. They haven't had salary increases on a regular basis. They've had staff reductions, really tight budgets. But at the same time, they're being told that their fiduciaries to their plan, to their retirement plan, they have to do more to operate in the best interest of their participants. And this is just one of all the many things they have to be able to have on their plate. So it's incumbent on us as the provider, we think, to reduce that burden as much as we can. So we're providing things like data visualization tools where they can easily get reports on the demographics of their plan and the habits of their participants, so they can better plan and better manage their own plans.
And I was going to say, you and your peer organizations, you're not just record keepers. You are really service providers, your technology companies.
Yeah.
You're doing some record keeping, but you're really delivering services to vast different types of people around the country, and that's really who you've evolved in terms in terms of the industry.
Mm-hmm. And that's become a standard expectation now of anyone in our space, is to provide those additional administrative services to reduce that burden.
And let's not forget, you mentioned technology and fintech, but let's not forget data security
Yeah.
cybersecurity, data breaches. I mean, these are things that they haven't yet occurred in our sector, our space. But I would imagine that
But they may.
protecting, oh, they may. I mean, it's the reality of the world we live in is
Yeah.
that you have people who are hacking and doing things that are not above board, but you've got to prepare for the unexpected.
And we expand our staffing and our tools in cybersecurity every year. It's an increasing source of additional investment every year.
In terms of one last follow-up, I want to in terms of the expenditures for infrastructure, you're actually expanding your operation to the city of Richmond.
Yeah, we are. You know, we've really outgrown we've grown substantially in the last 10 years, and outgrew the space that we own on North Capitol Street in Washington, D.C. We're renting a lot of space. Very expensive rent in Washington, D.C. Our employees also incur commute times to get in and out of work an hour and a half each way every day, typically. And so one of our objectives is to reduce our footprint in Washington. It'll still be our headquarters,
Sure.
Definitely, but reduce our footprint back to the space that we own, okay? Give up all the leases that we have in office space in the adjacent area, and then rent office space in Richmond. And we have enough space now in the city of Richmond for about 250 employees. And beginning next month, we'll be transferring, I think it's 81 employees from Washington to Richmond. Probably within a couple of months thereafter, we'll be at about 100 where we begin hiring from the local market. And then probably in 2 or 3 years, as turnover occurs in Washington and as we shrink our footprint in Washington, we'll probably have as many as 250 people in Richmond. So that not only makes us more economical, but it also gives us more backup, redundant services in case we have power shortages or various obstacles for running our operation in Washington. We've got that backup in Richmond.
And it's in line, sorry to interrupt you, but it's in line with some of your peers, what your peers have done. I mean, the
Yes.
goal is to not protect yourself, but minimize cost and look for ways to optimize driving results to your clients. And you do that through different sites and infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
So Bob, I want to thank you very much for appearing on the show today. You gave us so much to think about, from the trends to how RC has evolved as an organization, and we appreciate you coming on and hope to have you back at some point in the very near future.
Thank you, Jeff. I love the program. Keep it going.
We're going to try. Thank you.